coming at you from the lake. What's up, buddy?
Yeah. Thanks for driving that home and pushing the needle a little bit further. I'm in Nashville with my mom, sitting in a bed in the guest room, so not nearly as comfortable and awesome as a view at the lake, but I appreciate you rubbing that one in. Welcome aboard, folks. Today is August 9th, 2021. We are the Crushing Iron Podcast, and this is episode 502.
Yeah, it is.
We've been doing quite a few casts here, not in the same room as of late. That's just I think indicative of the busyness that is the summertime. As I was mentioning to a couple people last week, I was like, I just think I forgot last year how insanely busy life is for both of us in race season. Like May, June, July, August, September, October is just full on gas. You got people racing, you got traveling, you got going to races, you got races for ourselves. It's just a busy time, but I'm thankful for technology that we can do this both in person at the hub, where obviously the sound quality is a lot better, but we can also, go back to our roots, which is hopping on Skype with our $15 headsets and doing the best we can with what we have to work with.
Yep, it is nice. And I mean, this is our roots, right? And that was the whole thing, right? We're moving around, and today I happen to be looking at a 17-mile long lake, and you're looking at pictures from your childhood.
That's exactly what I'm looking at right now. There's a picture of me with like a mushroom haircut, like bleach blonde hair from summertime. I think I've got some like black, nice shoes on, and I don't know if you call them khakis, but they're like white pleated pants with a blue and white button-down shirt tucked so tightly into my pants that I think my smile is more from lack of oxygen going through my lungs and my body than it is an actual smile. Not to mention the fact that I hate taking pictures and obviously did so back when I'm thinking I'm like age 7 or 8.
Oh, 7. Okay. I
Yeah,
feel like I've seen that picture.
What do you mean 7? Or you have seen it? I think there was actually someone took a picture like back in the day when we did camps. We would meet at my mom's house here in Nashville. I think we had some athletes like take a couple ninja shots of me back in the day. This is probably like 1987, 88, I'm guessing, because it's at my grandparents' farm out on Sneed Road. Dear God, help me. But yeah, that's what I'm looking at. And it's not a 17-mile long lake, but it is definitely a picture of my childhood that I would like to soon forget, but it won't today.
Well, speaking of childhood, quickly, I'm with a few buddies from my childhood, and we're up here on the lake, and my buddy's got a great house, and we're going to do the pontoon later. But I walk up there this morning, and they're watching Beverly Hillbillies reruns.
I like this.
I have to admit, I was like, what? And then I sat down, and boy, some of those shows were outstanding.
I'm telling you, man, like it's a lost art. Like, and we'll go into intro here in a minute, but I had the same kind of feeling yesterday. I went on my long run here around town, and I don't normally listen to music, but I was like, you know what? After about halfway, I stopped and refilled my water because it's just like obviously grossly humid and nasty out everywhere. And I stopped at like this red light, and this guy, younger fellow, came up next to me, and I had already turned on my phone, like put on Pandora, obviously Pearl Jam radio, put it back in my little spy belt, turned it on, and he stops for a minute, and he was like, who is that? And I was like, that's Red Hot Chili Peppers. And he looked at me with this face of like, whoa, who are these guys? I'm thinking like, dude, you don't even know. Like,
Oh,
you
man.
literally don't even know. But yeah, going back old school and looking back through things is always fun. We hope you all had an awesome weekend. There was about 6 billion people participating at USAT Nationals this last weekend in Milwaukee. And I want to get into that for a minute here in just a second after we give the intro. But I just want to say, if it's your first time tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general, that your time is valuable. So we appreciate you giving us a little bit of that today. We cover it all. We cover triathlon, we cover life, we cover everything in between. We'll occasionally do swim, bike, run specific podcasts. We will do race recaps. We will do race previews. We will have on the very occasional guest, which I do believe, and I'll talk to you. Remind me after the cast. I want to talk to you on air about this, but I do believe we found our guest, one of our athletes, that actually reached out to me after we did the podcast last week about the guest we might have on, and it was an athlete that we work with that was actually here coming up in September 11th here next month, but was actually in the Towers on September 11th.
What?
Yes, so I'll talk to you about it there, but I would love to have this athlete on the podcast. But we went over that, so we'll definitely have another guest on. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just kind of sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through, what our athletes are going through, as Mike and I ourselves. Like, we're still trying to figure it out. We're not experts. We're not professionals. We're just on that endless pursuit of trying to figure it out, trying to get better as we get older, and still have that inner belief that our best days are yet to come. And so we try to share that in a consumable, digestible way that you can apply to your own life, and hopefully help you in a happy and healthy endurance sports journey.
Mm. Yeah, we will. And that'll be crazy to have that
I know
athlete
he
on.
reached out to me. I think the day we did that podcast was like, "Hey, I don't really tell many people this, but wanted to, I was like, dude, if we're gonna have anybody on, I'd love to have it be an athlete, that we
Yeah.
know, like someone that's personable, not just some like random, Joe Blow off the street." So, well, I'll talk about that a little bit more off air with you. But and then we also have a closed Facebook group. If you want to be a part of that, you can search Crushing Iron Group on Facebook and answer one simple question. We'll let you right in. We'll use some of those. We'll use that community oftentimes to kind of drive the vibe and the topic for the podcast. Before we got recording today, I went and popped in and uh, had people drop in and see if they had anything they want us to cover. So we'll try to get through some of those questions today and probably later on in the week. But there were two things I wanted to bring up before
Okay.
we got rolling. One, and I was getting to think about this, and I know you're salty about Wisconsin moving from September to June. And a lot of people are salty, like, oh my God, it's going to be so hot. It's going to be harder to train on. And I gotta say, like, I get it because Wisconsin, and it reminds me, and well, I think it will always be to the old school athletes who have been doing it for such a long period of time. It's that first fall feeling race. Like the leaves change. It's football season. You got a hoodie on. It's just a really cool feeling, and I love that. But at the same time, we also oftentimes really harp on Ironman for making races easier and taking the easy way out. And a lot of people, yeah, just hear me out here.
I'm hearing
And
you.
and what's this? What's happening here is the race is going to become harder because the temperatures are going to be hotter. It's going to be hotter to train for a lot of people, depending on what part of the country you live in, to get ready for hills. And that's been the most of feedback that I've read online, and all the people who are very unhappy. It's like, oh, it's going to be so hot and unbearable. I'm like, well, hey, we can't have it both ways. We can't complain that Ironman takes the easy way out and does things like move, you know, Louisville from August to October to make it easier, and then say the same thing when they move Wisconsin and what I would consider making it harder in June.
All right. Well, if we're going to do that, can we bring back the mass start and then I'll be all in.
And that's where I was going with USAT Nationals. They did them. They did waive age group starts,
Yeah, I heard that.
which I was like incredibly pumped to hear. Like Jay Young, one of our athletes said, yeah, they're doing my age groups. They're gonna like everyone's gonna go in together. I was like, ah, thank God. Like I listen, I don't give USAT credit a lot because they do a lot of things wrong. But thank God they did this right. And hey, they did it in your state. They did it in Wisconsin. And I do have to say, like again, USAT usually doesn't do everything right. Nationals can be a absolute cluster because there's absolutely so many people there doing races over 2 days, like 6,000 athletes. But the feedback that I got was that it was an amazing experience from all. We had
Oh
a
yeah.
bunch of athletes up there. They had honestly like, and from what I understand, Milwaukee has like the perfect location to do this in. And every athlete that I have heard back from already had nothing but good things to say about the event, the course, the how it was laid out, everything, which is, as you know, as a triathlete, like you rarely hear that. You always have somebody that's complaining about something. But so I just want to give a kudos. We take shots, and we critique and have critical comments for every branded race, from Ironman to Clash
Hmm.
organization and USAT. So hey, when they do things right, we got to give them the same round of applause. So I just want to say give a big shout out to USAT for putting on what I hear was an absolutely outstanding weekend of racing in Milwaukee.
I heard the exact same thing from
Yeah.
a couple of athletes, and one of the guys. I'm sure you had a couple guys, but I was trying to figure out because I guess the Worlds is the next step. Um,
Yeah. So if you have to,
Nationals, and they canceled this year's World, so they qualified for next year's or something in
yep. So
Abu Dhabi.
yes, I'm sure it's always somewhere crazy. Like you and I both had an athlete qualify for Team USA to go to Worlds, but yeah, it's always somewhere like crazy. But yeah, so they pushed that back. But yeah, you have to, and I think, listen, like they have to. I think sometimes people give USAT like nationals not a bad name, but the as with all sports, like the title oftentimes doesn't really do it justice. It's like, we kind of make up titles, and sometimes it sounds a little more prestigious than it really is. And
Mm-hmm.
nationals kind of has that reputation because it's not easy to qualify, but it's not impossible. It's not as hard to qualify for nationals as it is for 70.3 World Championships or Kona or ITU World.
Well,
So it's
this
totally different.
this year
Um,
it is.
but because you have to place in a certain percentage area. But having said that, the field there is so deep because so many people come. It is usually loaded with like absolutely incredible athletes from all over, short course specialists, long course specialists. So many people show up to get really great, um, great competition. So if you end up making it in that top percentage to qualify for Team USA, then kudos to you. Give yourself a huge pat on the back, because it is not something that's easy to do, because the field there is so insanely deep, because so many people come and so many people there in each and every age group.
Mm. Yeah, I agree, man. I remember looking it up one time, and my best Olympic time would have placed like 140th in my age
Yeah,
group.
right. Yeah, it's unbelievable the level of competition that they have come there. So again, we had a lot of athletes go there and do well, and then I also saw that uh, Boulder 70.3 happened over this weekend. We had some athletes that were racing there, and even with like the really poor air quality, that they still had the race. From what I understood, we had an athlete on the podium there, and they said that while the race went on perfectly, with no hangups and no kind of interruptions or changes due to the bad air quality, they did cancel the award ceremony for the air quality.
Oh,
Which is like, wait a minute,
okay.
you're gonna you're gonna race all day, and which is worse, obviously, for your respiratory system to race in it. But then when it comes to standing around later on in the day, you're like, yeah, you know what? Let's get everybody out of here, because we don't want you standing in it. We're perfectly fine with you racing in it at top speed for anywhere from 4 hours to 8 hours. Let's get our priorities in order here.
Well, I don't know. I've given up on some of that kind of stuff.
Don't give up, man.
Not given up, but like I don't let it. I'm trying to not let it phase me.
Oh, I'm all for this, man.
Yeah, let it
I'm
go. Let
I'm
it.
all
I'm
about
just
just
like
let
a
it go,
duck
man.
on a 17-mile lake. It's just
Just
going right off my
God,
back.
keep rubbing it in, dude. Keep rubbing it.
It's
Um,
it's really not that nice. Maybe I'll
yeah,
post a picture.
I hope it gets storm stay and you're not able to go out on the boat. Anyway,
It doesn't like storms.
do you have? No, it's too bad, man. Do you have any topics, or do you want to roll into some of the questions that were posted in the Facebook group? I know sometimes after a weekend you've had a couple things fester and marinate. So, yeah.
No, not a real topic, but since I am on sort of a road trip and
Mm-hmm.
in the midst of training for Ironman, I just want to say that I've been really good. I've been solid every day, and it's been, trainer out of the car here and run here, find a pool there, whatever. And I'm going to hit the lake later. So it's not always the most easy thing to do when you're traveling. And I know we always talk about like, usually when you go on the road like that, you kind of want to just, maybe do some running, and it's tough to bring the bike because you're like, yeah, let's bring the bike. Then it just becomes a big pain in the ass because you're lugging a bike around all the time and
Mm-hmm.
not riding it. But the trainer has been working out for me, and I'm going to be going up to Wisconsin this weekend to ride the course and do that whole. They got kind of a weekend going on again,
Yeah, I
one
see
of
that.
the training weekends, and meeting some athletes up there, and going to go for that. But other than that, I don't know. That's just that's my personal life. But that's what we do. We talk about personal stuff.
Yeah, you're
And I
being
saw
a
you,
road warrior. You're making time. You're taking bikes. You're taking trainers. You're getting your work done. No excuses, right?
right?
I
Yep,
mean,
swam in the old public pool the other day outside. It's pretty sweet. They
dude,
have
there's
meats there.
outdoor pools are the greatest. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Outdoor pools are the greatest. So I fully support that. Because this time of year, indoor pools are like 95 degrees.
Hmm.
I
Yeah, it was
swam.
cold. It was chilly actually. The water, it was really nice, man. They had that we used to have a big pool. It was just this big pool, there was no lanes, but now they recreated it and it's got like I think 6 lanes. They have meets there all the time now. It's an outdoor pool. It's pretty interesting. So I jumped on
Outdoor
that, and there's
pools are
like
where it's at, man.
8 people there on a Saturday afternoon. It's just sad.
That's it.
Like
Eight
in the
people.
whole place. And I'm not kidding you, they probably could house 300 or 400 comfortably in this pool. It's that
Dude.
big.
Well, listen, let's not complain, because if there had been 300 to 400, we wouldn't hear the end of it.
You're true.
Because you'd be going on a huge rant of why are so many people at the pool right now. And so, hey, listen, if you get the lane to yourself, you get a lane to yourself. There's nothing better than walking on deck and seeing a lane open. And like that, like, as we saw some other people like post about, how funny it was, not funny, but how interesting it was to watch these like speed walkers in the Olympics like race a
Mhm.
marathon, and people were like, how making jokes about how funny they walk and how interesting it is. And I'm like, that's how everyone looks when you walk onto the pool deck and you see one lane open. You don't want to run. Because listen, the last thing you want to do is wait any longer, because a lot of people like, I had to get going, had to make, had to get my stuff packed, went to the locker room, because like I went and swam here Friday at the Green Hills Y, and you walk by the pool, right? Like that's the other thing. Like if you walk by the
Oh
pool,
yeah, you
and
peek in there.
oh dude, I got changed and into my suit and on a deck in like 37 seconds, because
Yep.
I rolled on by, and all I saw was the far end lane against the wall wide open, and I'm thinking, man, it's like a Friday afternoon. Shows me a lot of people come in, like the post work crowd. I swear, I picked the first locker. I stripped down so quick, got done, swimsuit on, back on deck. Boom, 2 seconds, I'm ready to roll. And I wasn't even like ready. Like because all you really need to do to reserve your lane is just drop your goggles in front of it, right? It's like putting the jacket over the movie theater seat back in the day, and you're like, oh, sorry, someone's sitting there. You're like, what? Someone's sitting there. No, they're not. It's like you're putting a hat in the seat. It's all you need is one piece of your equipment, and it's in. And then you call the other person who like has the audacity to be like, "Hey, are you gonna swim there?" No, dude, I'm just gonna stretch for 45 minutes and stare at the lane. Yes, it's my lane. Are you kidding me right now? But what can happen, it's typical pool etiquette, is you have the people that understand and know that kind of tactic. So you know what they do? They enter from the other's end of
Oh, that's the.
and they slide on in. They're like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Were you about to swim here?" And then their mind, they're thinking, "Gotcha." You're
Yep.
like, "What are you gonna say? You gonna argue with them?" I would be like, "Yeah, I'll hop in with you. I'll put my biggest paddles on and make sure I don't, scuff up your shoulders in the way." Um, but that's how everyone looks when they look like the Olympic fast walkers, when they see there's one lane left and they don't want to wait. We don't want to run, because you can't run. You want to get whistled by the lifeguard, and you don't want to seem like that guy. So everyone does that like really super fast walk with like your butt cheeks clenched, trying to get over to their lane. Like, got it. Now I can take my sweet time, do my arm swings, do my arm circles, feeling like I'm Michael Phelps, and then I'll get back in the pool.
Hey, by the way, how fast do they do that marathon? It's unbelievable.
Oh, dude, they're flying, right? And
They're
that's another
sub
thing.
three, right? Or am I getting crazy here?
No, then a sub 3 marathon, no. Wow, dude, I don't know. I think there was some. No, there's no way they were sub 3.
Really?
I do think they were sub 4. So I think it was sub 4. Which again, like if you're gonna make fun of them, go back and look at your best Ironman marathon, and if you didn't beat them, then start making fun. Which I would say most people probably haven't. Yeah, they are flying. Um, yeah, so it's incredibly complex sport, because I guess you have to not complex.
330 is the world record.
330.
Yep, 332.
You guys juicing. No way. Can't
Wait a
fast
minute.
walk like that. That's
Yeah,
unreal. But
that's what it says.
I think you get penalized, like, because you have to obviously have one foot on the ground at all times. So it's so much about timing, because you have to have that perfect cadence of like one foot's on the ground, the other foot's barely leaving. But yeah, listen, it's a sport that I got to give them a ton of credit for, because it's just kind of weird to watch, but I just can't imagine walking that fast, except trying to get to my lane on the pool deck.
I know many walk a mile in less than 6 minutes.
I don't
What?
I don't believe that for a minute.
I mean, I'm just reading it off of the, you know,
They can
five
walk under a mi see, to me, that's more impressive than running a mile in under 6 minutes.
531 is the world record for a mile.
What, for walking?
Yeah, I know it's unbelievable.
God, if I wasn't feeling slow enough already today, now I'm feeling really slow.
Maybe we should add that to our bag of tricks.
Oh my
So if you're gonna
god.
walk a Ironman marathon, you might as well walk it this way.
Seriously, if you're gonna be doing 6 minute what? Anyway, no way.
Yep.
Yeah, that's incredible. Olympics are over, unfortunately. I was giving us some awesome things to watch, which I will say, and we'll get back on topic here and cover some questions. But that's the other thing that I love of like during Olympic seasons, when you go to the pool, everybody gets invigorated to swim during the Olympics, and you see
Hmm.
people who have like literally never done the butterfly before attempting the butterfly. Like you see, like, you see people who probably haven't swam in like 5 years are rolling on the pool deck. They pull out of their bag, their goggles, and what do they got? They got like a newly purchased Speedo American flag cap. They put it on, they're like feeling good. They're like, I think I could do some of these strokes. They get in the water, do a couple arm circles, and they start trying to do the butterfly. And you're like, I think you're going to drown and die. Like, there's no way, even going from like a swimming background, you couldn't pay me to even attempt a 25-yard butterfly right now. I think both my shoulders would be thrown out of socket. Like, there's no way I have any desire to even try the butterfly. It was one of my bigger strokes. Backstroke was my thing, but no butterfly. No, thank you.
No, me either. I don't even know. My shoulder would.
Yeah,
It's out of socket just thinking about that.
I know. But we got questions today. We from our Facebook group. We will cover those today. I'm see how many we can get through. I may go in order. I may pick and choose. And this is the first one is a question that we get a lot. Fran Bridges asks, what is the biggest determining factor that signifies when someone is ready to jump from 70.3 to 140.6? And this is, listen, I think everyone wants a like specific time, threshold or pace or power or something to like give them the green light that says like physiologically I am ready, I can do it. But the biggest determining factor to me is time. What makes sense from you from an availability standpoint? Does it make sense to fit into your life? Because oftentimes it doesn't. It doesn't fit in your life. Like Chuck News said, alcohol. Because most people will sign up for races after having a few too many glasses of wine on a Sunday, or Monday when it comes out. But to me, that's the biggest thing: is do you have the time? Can you make the time? Are you willing to sacrifice other things with time in your life to make it to where you can actually give it a good go? Because to me, that's it. Like I had an athlete comment in Training Peaks who is married but has a dog but no kids, and he commented, he was like, I'm feeling like I'm in a pretty good spot right now, but he's like, he's like, I can't understand how people make this type of volume and focus work into their life year after year after year with multiple kids and all these kind of crazy. Plus, some people don't do it year after year. Some people do multiple in a year, and he's like, I just can't imagine fitting this into my life every single year. And so to me, that is the number one. Is it not just do you have the time availability to make it happen, but do you have the time management skills, and do you want to put that kind of time into making it to make the jump? Because honestly, once you go from 140.6 training to a 70.3, it's like you're barely training. Like if you train for a full and the next year you do 70.3, so you're like, I feel like I'm like not doing anything right now. What's going on here? So to me, the biggest thing is more about time than it is, something that's like a physical metric you would use to determine if you're ready or not ready.
Huh. I think that's very logical, and especially on a first timers. I mean, that's probably what the question is. But it always seems interesting to me how, like when I first did it, you took me over to Muncie and we did that, and I was training for a full, but we dropped that 70.3 there early in the season, maybe a few months out, and I I knew I was never sure. I'm like, it always just seemed crazy while you're training for the full. But when I got the swim out of the way, that's when I kind of knew that I had it in me because I had um, seen the progressions, and then I was thinking to myself, okay, I get how this works now. And so I think so much of it is a mental game as far as knowing, like understanding and seeing where you came from and remembering that, and then as you keep it growing and you're like, oh, you know what I mean? It makes sense. Like I got 3 months left and I've come this far. And certainly we talked about that last time as far as 70.3 to Ironman and how, a lot of it is just belief system stuff and the ability to just start tacking on a little bit more and a little bit more. And like, I am just, I'm kind of amazed at like, I don't want to say how little it takes, but after you do it a few times, how it doesn't seem like that big of a leap after you get through that 70.3, because the 70.3 seemed like a hell of a big deal to me too as a starter, somebody who's just getting into it. And then once you got through that, you're like, okay, now it sort of resonates how this would actually happen, because it's unfathomable really when you start training for Ironman and you've never been close to doing one.
No, I think that's a great point, and something that is often overlooked is it's also relative to the time you're putting in now, right? So if you're an athlete fairly new to the sport, because again, it's always about progression, and so many athletes and just people in general want to progress quicker than their body or life is ready for them to progress. So take like athlete A who's been in the sport for 1 year and it's like I'm ready to make the jump, to a full, and they're barely averaging over the course of a year, they're barely averaging 6 to 7 hours a week. Well, the jump for them is going to be significant. Like the
Mm-hmm.
hours, like the hours that they're going to have to start accumulating to be ready because of where they are in their athlete life cycle and the progression that they haven't made yet. It's going to be a huge jump. Like to me, you never want to jump you never want to double your volume over the course of a year to make something work. Like you don't want to go from a 6 7 hour barely making that average athlete a week, average hours for the week over the course of the year, to doing a full where you're probably going to have to average more than double that. Like you're just asking too much of your body at once. So that is going to take the athlete longer. They're probably not going to have a great experience versus maybe waiting a year, which I know is like the last thing any athlete wants to hear. Everyone wants it now. Let's do it now. I want to do it now, and to give them time to get to where they're averaging 10 to 12 hours a week. And here's the deal is yes, you're going to have to wait a year, but the jump from doing, 70.3 training where you're averaging over the course of a year 9 to 12, 10 to 12 hours a week, the jump's only going to take you 6 to 8 weeks versus 4 to 5 months. So while waiting a year might not seem advantageous, like as we covered this in last week's podcast, how short of a block you really need for most people if they've been consistent, if they put the volume, and if they've been, really putting in some good week after week after week training over the course of the last year, the jump to a full block is not that much. It can be 6 to 9 weeks. So that makes it more appealing and it'll be easier on you. I think you see a better result then, but you're gonna have to wait a year, and that's the caveat. That's the one that usually snags. Because like, I don't want to wait. I want to do it now. But so again, it does to me. It always comes back to time. Most people are better waiting to then continuously and consistently put in the right type of volume to where the block for your full is going to be so much shorter than if you go from barely averaging any hours to now I want to basically triple what I've been doing and then ask a lot of my body and expect it to go well because it's more than likely not going to go very well.
Correct.
Joe Reeves, I'll be doing my first full in 2 weeks and wondering the percentages of people that wear a tri suit the whole time and those who switch from cycling kit to running gear. I'm leaning towards a tri kit the whole time. I've built up to 5.5 hours. Um, I have never changed. I've always gone with the cycling kit, or excuse me, I've always gone with the tri kit. And from a percentage standpoint, I don't really have any idea. But I would venture to say 90+% people probably just use one piece of attire the entire time.
Yeah. It's probably like people that are mainly runners, I'm guessing, that will switch because they're used to their run gear. But yeah, I'd say that's probably about right. I have never switched out of what I've been wearing. It just seems like kind of why. Um, it's usually pretty comfortable for me.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's always better to go with one if you can, especially when you're going from drenched clothing in the swim to bike where it's dry. They're gonna sweat, on your run. It's always better to do one kit. So if I could make that recommendation, find a kit you like, and add and make sure it's comfortable and make sure it's got a good chamois. Kevin Drury, for those done with their races this year and want to start training for next year, 12 months till my next race. Is it all off-season work focused around base training? Should you structure training this far out? How much is done by feel versus structure? Um, it's a good question, but that's why I hate the term off-season. It's like you should always have something specific to work on, and doesn't mean you need to revert back to base training either. But you can also structure sessions by feel. Um, to me, the biggest time and the biggest period that people need to take off is just from mentally and emotionally feeling that they have to be tied to a rigid structure of training. To me, that's what most athletes need. Yes, you need less volume, yes, you need less intensity, but you also need to keep things exciting. So put your tri bike up and your road bike up for 2 or 3 months and just ride your mountain bike or your gravel bike, and just use those. You're still going to get some fitness in, but your body needs to unload. Also, again, going back to like it depends, is like how much time did you really put in this year? Did you put in a lot of volume or did you not put in a lot of volume? Because you might need to just keep working through. What are your goals? How long is the race? Like there's a lot of variability that's taking place, but keep things flexible, because you can't focus on one race for 12 months. You just can't. It's not good for you. You need to break things up. If you run a lot, give up the roads and hit the trails. If or like that's why a lot of people will cross country ski in the off season, because it gives them a break from the things that are monotonous. Same thing goes from professional athletes. Once they get through with Kona in October, they usually ride their mountain bike or their cross bike for a few months. Like do something that keeps you fit within the realm of that's relative fitness to the sport you're trying to improve on. But to me, it's also a great time to not necessarily go back to base training, but also to maybe focus on and put in some focus blocks on the discipline that's your weakest. If you're a weaker swimmer, put in some good swim blocks, especially right now. Like if you're a weak swimmer in your um, your big races until next year, now is the time to swim a lot. Put the running and the cycling on the shelf for a little bit, or do a lot less of them, but make the time to get to the pool, get to the lake, because pool hours, you got outdoor, you got indoor, so much more availability this time of year. It's so much more fun and energizing and motivating to go swim when it's warm outside versus convincing yourself to get up in a cold pool when it's 35 degrees outside.
Mm. I couldn't agree with you more. When you're talking about that, my first thought was the sort of the trend now with kids in high school and stuff to focus on like baseball year round. And when I grew up, I played three sports, and that was the thing when we were growing up. It sort of give you that versatility, and it kind of kept you love. And I always hear, these kids burn out. All they do is lift weights and play football. 12 months a year and stuff like that. They don't go out for basketball anymore or whatever. And we have a sport. So we can kind of break it up in a little, like you're saying, into blocks. And one of the things with, most of us kind of grew up riding bikes a little bit, and certainly running probably on some level, whether it's sports or gym class or whatever. So you kind of have that built in. And to me, it always comes back to swimming, because I didn't swim when I was young. You did. And that's something that's in you, man, that like adults, as you've seen, we've all seen so much, is like you I think the only way to really get good at swimming is just swim a crap ton, you know, at this age, and keep it going, because you can't. I've had my moments where I felt like I was really getting to be a strong swimmer, and then I'll take 3 or 4 months off, and then it's like literally I never swam before in my life. It's. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it really, to me, that's my suggestion too, is always, especially if you're very weak at one of the sport, and cycling usually is the second one where people are uncomfortable, and I mean, I know a lot of people can't even drink while they're riding,
Yeah, exactly.
so I mean, you have to do it a lot, I think, if you didn't do it as a kid. And that doesn't mean you have to do it hard all the time or whatever, but just get real familiar and get like, make it sort of a second nature for you. Now's the time.
Yeah, I love that, and I think like I mentioned this kind of briefly in my weekly email to our athletes this morning. It was, I don't know when I'm going to race again, so I don't even know if it's, if what I'm in, my base phase, my off season phase, whatever phase you want to call yourself. You should always feel like you're working towards something. And for me, coming from like after Ohio, I thought one of the things I really needed to address was getting back into proper swim shape for me and really attacking my swim. And so I'm trying to make like little goals in the pool to help keep me focused, even though I don't have a specific, confirmed race on the calendar. I still want to get better. And I still want
Hmm.
to have like that motivation. So in my opinion, you shouldn't nor need a race to stay motivated, or have something tangible to look out for, a goal to keep you excited about getting back on the train or getting on the bike or getting, putting your run shoes on, out the door, or getting in the pool. Have small things to kind of keep you excited that really aren't race specific or time specific or qualification specific, but they're goals that are kind of minor in the fact that, they're not involved in triathlon per se, but they're going to help you become a better triathlete and do better the next time around. That's how I would approach it, is find little things to do. Maybe if running is your weakness, focus on, trying to set a 5K or half marathon, 10K PR in the next 6 months. It gives you something smaller, more tangible to work towards and be more focused on. Is it a triathlon? No. Is it going to help you be a better runner within triathlon? Yes. And that's always the way to think about things in terms when you're really, really far away from your race. Because it's always good to get better and work on our weaknesses, but it's also very, very helpful in keeping us kind of like, you know, filling our appetite of that race. What do I have next? And when it comes to motivation and commitment.
Yeah, that's good.
Holly Kesterson, what are some of the best ways a non-triathlete can support a triathlete during training? Physically, mentally, logistically? That's a great question. And I know your husband. And so I'm not going to answer for him. But I would say, I think one of the biggest pieces of feedback I get from athletes in terms of how they're feeling with significant others, spouses, kids, whatever, is guilt.
Yeah.
That is the number one reason that athletes will skip workouts or cut workouts short, or do workouts basically mindlessly moving through the motions because they feel guilty that they're doing it. They're missing this, they're missing that. And to me, this all goes back to discussions and support before, because if you have the full blown support of your spouse, of your friends, of your family, getting your kids involved. We've discussed this, I think, on a few podcasts. Is making it a family affair, getting them involved. Help them pick the race that you go to. Like what's exciting for them. Look at the things they can do in the city. Do runs with them, or include them in trainer rides, or let them swim while you're going to the pool. Let them feel involved in the process. Don't make it to where it's always being apart from your family, but it's something that's included and integrated into it. That way, everyone kind of feels a part of it, so they're supportive. So I would just say anything, and I think every case is different, obviously, with people and the relationships they have. Because I do also work with athletes whose spouses are 100% totally non-supportive, who couldn't care less that they do the sport, who have never been to their race, who wish they wouldn't. And honestly, I can't imagine how hard that is for them to not feel that kind of support. And I know it does weigh on them. So, is if you're the athlete, is working through to make sure that you have the support, and don't tackle things that you feel might cause extra strain or stress. It's a hard balance, I think. Because people call it a selfish sport. At the same time, there are so many other things we do in life that we do for ourselves that people don't call selfish. Like the amount of time people spend on social media, no one looks at you and says, "Oh, you're being so selfish with your time." People just do it. But you go out and do 30-minute, 60-minute run, and people will say you're being selfish for taking that kind of time. Like there's nothing selfish about self-care and taking care of yourself. So I think really it's just about the conversations, but it's about making sure that they know they're supported and they don't need to feel any kind of guilt for doing a session or leaving the house, and especially with their kids involved.
Yeah, you hit it right on the nose, man. And I think it's so easy for us to feel that guilt and sort of shame sometimes when we're and I like how you said, I mean, like you shouldn't feel guilty about self-care. And it's just such a, I don't know, I don't want to say a trend, but I feel like a lot of people kind of put the guilt trip on if you're going to go out and go run. Why are you going? Well, let's go, whatever. And I think we have to remember how, and I'm just saying this because I'm back in it, and I think there's so many ebbs and flows within training, and sometimes you are worn out, and sometimes you get beat down and whatever. But like for the most part, I think we lose track of how good we feel, if that
Hmm.
makes sense. And you get kind of like mired in the muck of the whole thing. And like when I come up here and I'm hanging around with my buddies who don't do any of this stuff, and they'll be the first to admit it. But like if we want to go out for a 10-mile walk today or something like that, no way, but it would
Hmm.
be easy for me to do that. And I can tell in just walking around and living day to day that I'm a stronger, healthier person. And I don't think that, I get kind of like upset when people, you know, come down on others for wanting to feel good. I mean, I think we all want to feel good. And sometimes we, may seem like we take the harder road, but I always say, people are just like, man, you look good for your, like I come back to my hometown and, no one hardly ever does triathlon around here, let alone, work out or whatever. And I'm like, my first thing is like, yeah, but honestly, I work really hard at this and it's paying off. And, as I get older, it's really interesting to see people kind of go, yeah, man, I really, they kind of get that sort of like, you can see it in their eyes. It's like too late almost.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing, worse than saying, well, you could probably, turn it around. But man, I just see some people, I'm like, this is not going to be easy,
I mean, let's be honest for a second.
All right, I'm
A lot of
trying.
times, it's also like other people project their disappointment in themselves onto you, whether
Hmm.
it's friends, family, significant others, whoever it might be, coworkers. People love to belittle and shame other people because they are jealous that they can't be as motivated and reach their goals and committed and do the things that you do. So their best retaliation to make themselves feel better is to make you feel like shit for being committed, goal oriented, driven person. And that's just how people are wired, unfortunately. Um, so I think a lot of times it also comes back to that. Oh, wait, why do you do that to yourself? Okay, just because you can't wrap your brain around what it takes to be committed to do something and to see it through doesn't mean that I can't. And so I think that's something that I think it's hard to separate, and obviously it doesn't make it easier to hear when people, don't care or think you're ridiculous or selfish for doing these things. But a lot of time, just because it's either their brain can't comprehend why, what it takes because they put that limit on themselves, or they know that intrinsically about themselves they have a hard time sticking with goals and seeing them through, so they'll do their best to kind of bring you back down to where they are, because misery loves company.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's real hard, you know, to deal with sometimes. And I think a lot of people, like, I mean, like with what's been going on over the last year and a half, where people are kind of forced and relegated to their home. It's sort of like a built-in excuse, I think, a lot of times. And that's the hard part for me is like, why, we got this, everybody's whatever. And I'm like, I'm pushing through, man. I'm just, because that's what life is. Sometimes it's tough and you got to go out and you got to work hard to, make things easier. And yeah, it is easy to just sort of like misery loves company is the best way to put it. But man,
Hmm. We all live an easy way out. Everybody does. That's how humans are wired.
it's
It's
like, I
like
don't feel
it's
good. Give me a
path of
pill.
least resistance. Exactly. Like, give me a pill. What
I'm
do I
like,
need to do?
I don't want, I go a totally opposite first thought process, It's like, I want to see if I can get through this, naturally with my body
Exactly.
and mind. And that's my first thought. And I think it's just so easy to go the other way because there's always like a remedy, you
Well,
know?
and there's always somebody or some company selling a shorter, faster, easier way, allegedly, right? To help you
Mm-hmm.
mask what's going on. And that's why, that's, how businesses are run these days, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Next up we have, let's see, I did Holly. Sarah, strength training while Ironman, half Ironman training, in addition to swim, bike, run, how much weight training and or body weight, higher intensity work it is okay to add to the routine. Another one that's 100% totally dependent on the actual person. Like, if you're just now starting to do that seriously, then you need to cut back your swim, bike, and run volume because you're adding a tremendous amount of stress to your body, and you're also probably going to be very, 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 very sore, from the weight training you're also adding in. It also very dependent on the type of weight training that you're doing. Like, if you're someone who's going to start tackling like Olympic lifts for the first time and has very little to no experience doing those lifts, then I would recommend really limiting your swim, bike, and run load before you tackle them, because you want to have perfect form when you do those. I also wouldn't recommend, if you're adding in even just a significant bump in weight training, I wouldn't shelve all intensity in your workouts. Maybe keep it in the pool, but shelve it on the bike and run for a week or two, because your legs are probably going to be, or other parts are going to be so sore that you're not going to be able to hit the numbers that you're going to want to hit or that you're accustomed to. So again, really, listen, anything you add to your life is stress. That's just one thing. Whether even have this conversation with people who love to play soccer. I've got some guys that play hockey in the wintertime, like the day of their long run also want to play hockey. And I'm like, dude, that's not going to work out very well for you. Like one thing is going to suffer more than likely. They're both going to suffer. Right. So it's not just about weight training. It's people playing full court basketball, soccer, hockey. It's like they usually do it for a few weeks and they're like, something's got to give here. You have to make an adjustment. So like this other guy loved to play hockey on Sundays, we moved his long run to Saturdays, and then I had him do his long easy and kept all his rides super easy after hockey is more of like an active recovery, because you can't just continue to beat down your body with stress, right? It all goes into one compartment. It doesn't go into a swim stress compartment, a bike stress compartment, a run stress compartment, a weight training stress compartment, a yoga department, a cross country skiing department. It all goes into one department. You, okay, the human. I think that's the vessel, and so you just have to really
Right.
be careful with how you're balancing stress, and understand that you can't always just add. You have, you have to look at it this way, like your body, easy example, like your body has 200 stress points that it can handle this week, given life, given sleep, given work, given relationships, given the time of year, given the heat, whatever it is. You've only got 200 points. So now you have to divide them up between the things that you want to do: swimming, cycling, running, yoga, weight training, pick up basketball, soccer game, coaching my kids' baseball game. All these things take up extra stress. So that's, to me, that is the 100 biggest. To me, that's the biggest factor you have to take into it. And then also, just again, what kind of volume we're doing in training versus the intensity or the ramp you're choosing in weight training. And obviously, like I said before, are you learning new, more dynamic, very difficult moves? Or if you're adding in some dumbbell curls, I think you're gonna be fine. If you're adding in like heavy squats, deadlifts, these kind of things, yes, you're gonna need to probably scale things back, and then kind of let the others meet the same stress level, so your body's adapted and can handle them, so you're not shelled and sore for 3 or 4 days afterwards, and see how that plays out for you.
Mm. Yeah, I think my thing on this is sort of like just do things where I don't try to make weight training or strength training a special session during the day kind of thing. I just kind of try to mix it into the day. I think a lot of us could actually benefit from something as simple as spending 5 or 10 minutes before a run going through, like core work and just stuff that kind of dynamically warms up your body, and it's strength in its own right. But things like that, I mean, because if you're not used to it, and I totally believe that that stuff matters. And like you're saying, I lean towards body weight, and whether that be pull-ups or push-ups or lunges and things like that. But even then, if I go too crazy on that stuff, it starts beating me up. So I just sort of like, I like to mix it in. I don't see anything wrong with like doing 20 push-ups here and there throughout the day. It's not a formal session, but I think those things all pay off in just overall balance and strength in your body, and walking lunges while your spaghetti's boiling, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do some small things are important. Movement, man. Movement, movement, movement. It's medicine. Britta Todd, any advice to an athlete searching for a PT in a new city to help recover from injury? Scared to go to a PT who doesn't know what they're doing, but want to know the right questions to ask them and get a consult to tell them if I can trust them. Listen, with all things in life, it's always about referrals. Referrals from people that you trust. I think Chris has answered this. He says they're a tri group or club in that city. That may be a good starting point. That do that, and then I think it's also helpful to look and search for, physios, PTs, athletic trainers, doctors, whoever it is that are familiar with what you do, like that are in the sport. To me, that's a huge, huge green light. Is someone who knows what you're doing. Like, I hate it when people come to the doctor like, yeah, he told me to stop running because it's good bad for my knees. Shut the hell up. Okay.
Yeah.
Seriously, shut the hell up. Like, go find a doctor, get a second opinion ASAP. It's idiotic. Find one that is in your field, and then honestly that understands you, that knows you, right? It's like that will look at you and say, okay, this is going to take 10 weeks. I know you're a triathlete, so you're probably going to get me sick. So here's what we're going to do. It's like that's another, just personality I think has to mix, and that again, that also personally also goes back to um, them understanding and being able to relate to what it is you're actually doing in a personal way. And I think that's how that's I always get the best feedback from athletes who have to see physical therapists or physios or athletic trainers or whoever. They always have the best feedback and the best experiences from someone who can relate to exactly what they're doing. So that's where I would start. And I'm sure the local tri club group probably even has someone they recommend. More than likely, there's probably someone in that group that's a PT.
Mm. Yeah, I have absolutely nothing to add to that.
All right, perfect. Matt Radford will probably be our last one, and we'll try and finish these up on Thursday. How do you dial in nutrition before a half or full Ironman? Since races typically don't simulate a full race day in training, do the math for calorie output intake, pros and cons of gels and powder supplements versus solid foods like fruits and PBJ. How many times do you need to pee on your bike to know you're properly hydrated? Whew, Matt, killing it today.
Wow.
Seek out professional advice. Period. Like that, to me, this is an easy one. Like, eh, find the best money you can spend. Some of the best money you can spend in the sport before you spend money on gear is to get the right fueling plan and make it work for you. That's it. Because no matter how great your training is or how great you think you're going to do, or your single sessions or your 1 hour sessions go, none of it none of it can be replicated from it or guaranteed to go right on race day when things go long. And I think that's just something that you have to spend the time to figure out. You have to be willing to tweak it. You have to be willing to test it. But it's just one of those things where, finding out, because listen, like, that's why I hate. So what do you guys use for nutrition? Okay, the most relative question ever. Um, and it's totally different for each and every person because we're all made differently. Our body demands different things. What's the intensity you're going to race at? How long you're going to be out there? How many have you done? What's the temperature going to be like? Can you handle a lot of carbs? Can you not handle a lot of carbs? Are you better at digesting foods than other people? What's your sweat loss rate? Like, all these things are just about you, Matt Radford. They're not about me or Mike or anybody else. So always look for, recommend a person to go through and do some testing to make sure you're, taking in the best things. Some people don't like things that are sweet. Some people like things that are bland. Like, it's so very specific to the actual individual. I can't emphasize, if you're going to spend money in the sport, and everyone spends money on it, finding someone to do that you trust, that you have a good experience with, then go from there.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Is that it? We got time for one? Or
Yeah, I mean, to set up the baseline. No.
I don't even know where we at time wise.
Oh, we're about done here.
We're about to. Oh, that's your. I need to get on the lake. Chat. I get that. I get that, man. As always, we love you. We'll get to the rest of these questions later this week, but we will definitely get to them. If you haven't been or want to go and stop by and be more of a frequent visitor, hit up our website, C26triathlon.com. It is definitely our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. Also has our ongoing club membership. It's a great way, as someone mentioned earlier, if you're looking for a plan to be laid out for you that goes 12 months, that's what it does. So no matter when your race is, we can do that for you. So hop in there. That's under the coaching tab, and then you can figure out more about the coaches that we have. They also have plenty of openings right now, I believe, so reach out to them. If you have any questions or comments for Mike specifically, he is at crushingiron@gmail.com. And if you need anything specifically, you can always reach out to me directly at c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, buddy. Well,
What we got, man? Enjoy the lake.
Yeah, for sure.
Swim in, enjoy yourself, and I'll talk to you Thursday.
All right, man. Hang on a second.